If I didn't have to write my name. So welcome to the roads summary. Should we call it that?
Great.
Great work by the committee, Carol, Dominique, Veronica, Valley, she's been ignored because she wasn't in the improv part of it.
Boy, I didn't know.
Yeah,
That's
you
so
did.
good. When you're ignored, you don't even know.
Yeah. Did you feel invisible?
No,
Good.
I think I was there for the important part.
Yeah. It was a great thing, and we owe Dominic.
Yeah, Dominique made.
When you see it, you might want to applaud.
Yeah, really, no kidding.
It's just librarian skills.
All right, so take it away.
Okay. Nothing else to say?
Not really.
All right, so let me just get a little set up here so that people online can also see what I see. 1 second. Okay. I pushed the record button. I was like, I'm going to forget every time.
Several people have
Share
asked if
screen.
they want to see it.
Of course. I mean, we want this as many people as possible. Sure.
I forgot to thank you all for coming up.
All
You're cutting your news short.
right, slideshow. Okay.
All right.
So it was really interesting to do this. We sat together and we first, well, I guess we'll just go through it. How did this happen? We sat together and we talked 35 people, and it was kind of our intro meeting, and we kind of gathered information, what was important. So from those 35 people who showed up at Beacon House, at that point, then we created a road survey together. And then from that, PINA approved it, and then it went out online, and I couldn't believe it. 161 households responded. That's households. And so I feel pretty confident about the survey and the data that came back, that we can represent at least some needs of the community, and that we have enough respondents to make them pretty valid. And so then the raw data came back, and then I wanted just to explain what did I do with the data. And then the raw data came back and the hard copies came back. I was the one who hand put them in, and I wanted to make sure I hand put them in. And the only time I looked at names was when I was just looking for duplicates. So I was just looking if sometimes if it were duplicates. So I quickly scanned the names, then I copied it into another place so that the names and the data were always separate. And to me, that was really important for an anonymity, because it's a small island. And we want to make sure everyone's voices are heard, but also making sure that everyone just feels equally represented. So really wanted to address that with privacy and anonymity. Okay. And then after that, I presented the data and broke it down. So you're going to see on the tables, there's a whole bunch of different comments. They are printed as they were written. There's nothing edited about them. And we'll have a conversation about what, if you want to cruise them or read them, that you're welcome to look at them as well. Okay. And then I should also mention, right after this meeting, Ken's going to send an email with exactly this presentation out, so you can review it at a later date. Or if there's, at the same time, why do we do this survey? It's to use it for advocacy. So if there's something that maybe your group or committee wants to talk about, then we can talk about sharing the data in lots of different ways. And I think that's really, really important. Okay. So the very first question that came up, I said, what do you like about living in Protection Island? So what I did here is I took all the respondents and I plugged it in, and the biggest letters are the ones that came up the most. So the bigger the word, the more important and the weight it is. So it's called a word wall. So you can kind of see what comes up. It's definitely community, definitely. It's quiet, it's parks, it's nature. It's ocean, it's rural, it's friendly, it's ferry, it's close. So there's a lot of just really interesting. So again, you can look a little bit more deeply, but it's neighbors, it's dogs, it's cats, et cetera. It's an interesting kind of, this is why we live here. These are the words that came up. And then this is quite interesting. Do you live on Protection Island full-time or part-time? So 84% respondents live here full-time. So just interesting data, right? The next one, are you a resident or property owner, renter or non-resident property owner? So 91% of residents are property owners. There's not very much residential or rental properties on the island. What is your primary mode of transportation on the island? So how do you get around? 50% is golf cart. Most are walk, so 40% are just walkers. So it says majority of the time. And then the green slice there is bike, and then the yellow slice is truck, and then car is the last slice.
Do people need more time to just gaze at that, or are we going too fast?
Anytime, if you want me to slow down, pick up, anytime you want to put anything on the chat as well,
I
or
just
open
wanna
your
say
mic.
that it reflects the respondents.
Mhm.
So it's not necessarily the entire island, and maybe renters did not reply. It's not necessarily, just we are dealing only with the respondents. That's important to keep in mind.
What is your primary mode of transportation in the community to and from Nanaimo? So mostly ferry was 49%, and then mostly boat was 47%. Oh. That's interesting, hey? How do we get to and from this beautiful place? Is there a drainage issue on your property? So the majority said no. With the people who said yes, that list will be provided to the city of Nanaimo just to peek at drainage area in your property. So that's the only time I'm going to share name and address. Okay. Are you satisfied with the current road conditions? So 34% say I am not satisfied, but 63% say they're perfectly happy as is. Interesting. Okay. So now, interesting, when you try to take a question, you kind of have to rank it. It kind of gives you just a slightly different type of data. So these are ranking data. So again, the first choice for the majority of our residents was more regular maintenance of existing roads. So that was the blue bar that you see here. Then the second one down is chip seal. We changed to chip seal. So that's in the first choice. But the interesting thing is, so when we look at first choice, we also have to look at second and third. So me, looking at what is the kind of top three of the top three is an interesting point. So let me just move this one screen so you guys can see better. And then I also, when I look at these ranking ones, I look at its opposite. What do people don't want? What is their last choice? So both of those kind of just looking at what does that data mean? And this is how there's ranking. Any questions or moments of pause you want here? Yeah, Gary.
The orange one is increase the frequency
Current increase. I think it's increased frequency of dust suppression.
Current maintenance, wasn't it?
Current maintenance,
Yeah.
yeah. Pardon me, increased current maintenance.
So you've also got up there in the blue then more regular maintenance of existing. So which is similar to increase the frequency. So if you put those two together.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And I'm making the assumption more regular maintenance is probably potholes.
Potholes specific. Yeah. Yeah.
That wouldn't be dust suppression, or that, no, that was a separate one. Sorry.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Are there
Can you
any?
go back to
Oh,
that?
please.
I find that just really hard to read, to understand. I don't know about anyone else. I mean, it's clear that the blue is really clear, but then sixth choice for many people was changed to chip seal. So what does, could you say more about what that
Sure.
means?
So when you have a ranking situation, you say, well, this is my top priority.
Yes.
And then, but you also sort of have to look at what is my last thing. If everything else was off the table, I would have to choose this one.
Okay.
So I think it's important. That's why I think looking at its opposition is kind of interesting. So what is the kind of top three that kind of bubble up? And then also what is its opposition? I think it's also, because it tells you what are people ranking at the very bottom.
Meaning that the purple one, people are saying, please don't do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Do you have any
Where's
pictures
kind of the
of what
last
chips
one?
seal looks
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, under the sixth choice, the purple is indicating.
Do everything else.
60 people of all the respondents. That's
So-
their last choice.
So the most important things are more regular existing, more regular maintenance, dust suppression. Oh, sorry, missed. Change road service to chip seal, then eco gridding chronic pothole areas. That's the way we're ranking the top choices, yeah?
Well, it's interesting because when you ask somebody a straight yes or no question, you get a pie, kind of a pie chart situation.
Yes.
And then ranking just kind of allows you to look at what is this compared to this. And so each person's going to have a slightly like my top three, maybe different from your top three. And then you kind of pool that data. So that's why when we move into further ones, kind of look at the top three, what pops up in all three. Because that tells you maybe the first person said, that's good. And I'll choose that as my second. And then the next person had the exact same thing, but reverse, which is equally as important.
Okay, thank you.
No
I
problem.
understand this.
Is that better? I don't know if I explained that correctly.
And the numbers on the left-hand margin aren't percentages, those are. not
Respondents.
actual numbers.
Yeah, the respondents,
Ah, great.
Got it.
not
Good,
percentages.
good
Yeah,
to know.
that'd be wonky math otherwise. Okay. And then roads, are there any further comments or suggestions that are not listed above in that last one?
I'm just wondering if you have a picture of chip seal so we can see what it looks like.
I don't have one today because today is more of a data, but we're happy to email that out to you. I think that were there pictures on the roads one
There
last
was.
time?
There was a
Link.
link
Hmm.
that gave you a whole description of what it is, how, what it's used for, how it's done, so forth. And
Like
that
there
was
was a-
in the original notice of the survey. And it gave you that link to go and to look it
Yeah,
up
so
and it
maybe,
explained
yeah.
what it is.
And one of the reasons it's phrased that way is because it's my understanding that if we don't go to the city and make an alternate suggestion, their default position probably would be chip seal. And one of the reasons that I wanted to get involved with this was because personally I'm opposed to that. And I am afraid that if we don't get proactive, we're gonna get literally mowed over in this because the dust suppression company that does our current dust suppression is going out of business in
Probably 2024 will probably be their last year.
so that's where this issue is going to come back to the city's attention because they're either gonna have to find someone else to do this or make another choice. And I don't know where the sentiment that it would be chip seal came from, but I certainly have known for several years that this was in the wind.
I
Also,
believe
we're,
that
sorry,
at the very top of Dingle Pot Road, there is a stretch of chip seal. The other thing is there myth that chip seal doesn't need maintenance.
It does not strong and it
No,
doesn't last.
it needs maintenance, just like,
But
we're
the city had
maintaining
come
our
up with
new
this
town.
idea back in 2019, and we were supposed to have it. They were saying we were going to have it in 2022, and then it was put to 2025, and then they said 2027. So it keeps getting pushed down the road.
Okay, we're drifting a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, this conversation. will
Well,
probably
I
come
think,
out
I think
later.
it just points back to the point of why PINA has done this,
Yeah.
is to collect data. So we understand what the majority have, and then we can explain to the city, this is what the data set has said.
And the one thing I found out about chip seal, because I don't know anything about it, was I started asking around, and one of the people I asked was Graham Ellis, who's traveled all over on rural roads, and he said, you think you have a problem with filling potholes now? With chip seal, they would be hard, like hard, and you would not be able to remedy them. So I thought all that information is interesting because we're all ignorant of what this is about unless we're engineers. So,
on another matter, we did have a product available, maybe available, it's an eco-friendly dust suppressant. And we're gonna investigate that. If,
Okay, so are we okay if I continue? Okay, so here it says, are there any further comments or suggestions? So again, big words are going to be what people are saying. So you can see that people are worried about speed, dust, chip seal keeps coming up, potholes came up a lot. Seems to poke a lot of annoyance in people. Yeah, and just looking at those pieces. So again, this will be emailed out to you. Okay. Did I go too many? No, one more. Okay. Number 12. Roads, what is your selected road surface? So this is the one I'd like to just take a pause on and just really get you to understand this one. So let's just talk, the red, as you can see, is the chip seal. So we're going to say 28.7% of our participants who responded said that they prefer chip seal. Then when we go up to the orange, it's 36.3%. These are people, if you read carefully, it says gravel surface with eco grid in problem areas. Okay. Then we go into the blue, it's at 32.5%, and this is current roads, leave as is, dirt roads. So the first time I saw this data, I had a moment, it's a third, a third, a third. But if you think about the yellow and the blue, what is that saying? It's saying, I want dirt roads. One is saying, you know what, I want you to address the potholes and problem areas, but I still want dirt roads. And the other one's saying dirt roads. So we can extrapolate from this saying 2/3 of participants said, I want dirt roads. 1/3 wants chip seal.
and the eco grid is what we have at the circle. They put that in because the circle used to be all mud And it did fit and make a difference. Yeah, it was very, because it's so heavily used.
Yeah, and I think, this is a really important slide to go back to the city with and explaining, saying, I think potholes are something that need to be addressed, and it's coming out in this data in this way. But the 2/3 are saying dirt.
So EcoGrid is a separate thing from chip seal, right?
Right, EcoGrid's like, that mesh stuff that's in the
Yeah.
circle that just kind of holds everything there.
But it's still gravel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just holds it better.
What's the green sliver?
The green sliver is investigate other options. Yeah, no problem. Okay, any self-evident questions, comments, process away. Okay, so these ones are tricky. Again, so taking a moment and it's explaining this. Do you want me just to point here, this top bar, this
What's
big,
the topic?
this one is just rate your road, what's important to you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the number one choice is more regular maintenance of potholes. Potholes, as you can see, just keeps coming up. Then after that, it says road surface. So again, this is, I think, where a lot of people were maybe putting their chip seal thoughts on. Parking in the circle, improve road safety. So you can see parking in the circle is this yellow. Improve road safety is green. So you can see in this first choice, second choice, third choice. Purple is more frequent dust suppression, right? Measures to reduce speed is light blue. Reduce gravel on shoulders is pink. Improve visibility is green. Continuous walkable boulevards is dark red. Okay, and keep more permeable road surface. Any questions there? Just taking a moment, kind of looking at, well, what popped up? So to me, in number one, it was more regular maintenance potholes and keep a permeable, which means dirt surface. So that popped up as number one. And then the red is road surface. And then the light blue again is measuring speed. So potholes, permeable, and speed, and then road surface, depending on how you look at that. And then to me, it's also looking at the second and third, that trend kind of continues as well. So I don't usually look too much at the middle stuff. I usually go to the end. Oops, pardon me. And then looking at the 10th choice, it's kind of all over the board. What is its opposition, right? What are people left? What's on the bottom of the pile for most people?
What would be that level of participants responding to that first line? Is that
Sure.
20?
20 is the first line. They jump by increments of 20. 40 is the top line. Give me a thumbs up when we want to proceed. But it takes a second to just kind of look at the data and understand.
Can you go back to the early notes?
Of course.
Well, two of the major concerns was potholes and dust, right?
Mhm.
Isn't chip seal gonna take care of that?
Yeah. It just, it just depends, but that keeps coming up as options.
There's some trade-offs because you have the chemical that they seal with. I think that's a oil product. Bitumen. And so there's concerns with that. Yes.
So I don't know a whole lot about chip seal, but I think I've heard it referred to sort of poor man's pavement.
Mhm.
So I think what they do is, you remember, they used to call it tar road,
Yeah.
and they put a layer of tar down, they put a real thick layer down. Then they have a gravel that's been crushed with so many sides on it. And then they lay that down on top and it seals to the oil. And then when you've got a sort of a pavement. But the issue is, if you've got an area that's got really good drainage and a hard surface, it'll stand up pretty good. But if you've got something where you don't have good drainage, or you got high groundwater, and it's mushy underneath, you don't have a good base, strong base, you break through like you do on ice. And then that's where I think Valley's talking about, you get a pothole, and it's not these rounded, where you drop into ours that are kind of right now, they're a rounded pothole. It's a very sharp edge because of the oil and the chip seal, and they're a bit more brutal for driving over. So
I'm walking on.
I'm walking.
I don't know enough about it to speculate what it would be, but I think if you just put the chip seal down on the way we've got our road bases, anywhere you have have potholes today, like say where Kay McIntyre lives, because that's a really high water level there, and that's why there's so many potholes. But I think you'll probably still get potholes, but they'll be a little bit different.
A
Aggressive.
little more
A
sinkhole-y.
little, yeah, or something like that. I don't know.
There's a
I'm not an
secondary
expert on this,
issue
but-
with,
I
we're
believe
trying
there
to
was
keep the width of our roads as narrow as possible to slow people down. But also you have some heavy equipment, so if they're running over the edges of that, they're gonna break it up.
Break the edges up, yeah.
The
Yeah, there's a
other, I
drainage
believe there
problem.
was also a conversation about, had you mentioned it, Gary, drainage.
Yeah.
Our roads the way they are have some sort of, they will take some water. Chip seal, if it's sort of like pavement, it's going to run off, and if there's yards that already have some drainage issues, this could make it a little worse.
And I recall that Kim came in right at the end of our community meeting and said, potholes are the #1 maintenance causing issues for golf carts.
Yeah.
She said it's what's,
Yeah.
she is fixing golf carts for all the time because of damage caused by potholes, which surprised us. Also that there's so many of them. I mean, we haven't done a golf cart census. She said there were 300. She knows.
The pothole
Yeah,
count.
no, she doesn't count
We
because
should
she
name
now maintains them, yeah.
May I switch? Are we ready for next slide? Okay. Okay. Is there a road concern, right? So the big concern is vehicles. I thought that was an interesting that popped up. What is your main concern about road that wasn't listed above? Speed, parking, damage, dust, safety, reducing potholes. Potholes came up again. Yeah. So just as, food for thought, this is what's coming up as comments.
It's big.
So now we're getting into the bike locker stuff. So this is quite interesting as well. I was quite surprised at the respondents. Bike lockers. Are you interested in storing your e-bike on the Nanaimo side in a secure locker? 35% said I would really like a bike locker. It's interesting stuff.
I could just
Please.
add a little to that one. So right now, we've received some positive support, both from the city and the Port Authority.
Yeah.
That they would be certainly entertaining it. The city's kind of has it on their plan, but it's several years down the road. We'd like to speed it up maybe. And this data might help that. And the NPA is always looking for maybe a little like another revenue stream. And so to have some on their property would be a shorter walk between your boat and storing an electric bike. And they've already picked out or recommended a spot. So
Yeah, they're very open.
yeah, so both of those parties are supportive. So I think this kind of data gives them an idea of how many to start with.
Yeah, how many will be rented immediately? And then just knowing that some bike lockers need to have electricity, e-bikes are going to be important to plug in, and the lockability and things. So, we can bring these things to the city.
And security at the locker.
Mhm,
because
exactly.
I was talking to someone the other day and said they put the bike in a locker and they broke into the locker.
Okay, and then this came, what was this one again? Oh, this was a question directed for us. We're at PINA. What things do you want PINA to look at over the next 2 to 5 years? What things that are popping up? And I'm not gonna lie, internet popped up as #1. That was a surprise to me that internet is, so that's pink, in case you're wondering. This next one is roads. So on this first one, so internet, roads, and this yellow one is dock space, and the light one is parks. I'm just making sure people want parks instead. And so, yeah, so just looking at that, but you can see pink is consistently top. That was noted by PINA.
Good luck.
That was noted. Yeah.
Things are changing.
Yeah.
Good. Rogers. just
Okay.
bought.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just bike shop, right?
And then, of course, looking at its opposite, what people are less interested in. Just having a moment to scan it. Yeah.
Okay, meaning that the long-term care facility is like the lowest thing they think.
We
Lowest
should
priority.
focus on. That's, yeah.
And we included that question or that particular one because there was a small group of individuals on the island who had explored this concept a few years back. Cooperative housing or some way of downsizing from where you might be now to something that might suit you in your later years when you've got mobility issues. And
Need some support. Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't as high on.
Might be a reflection of the age of the respondents, the immediacy.
Yeah.
Their requirements.
Yeah.
Dominique, would you mind going back?
Of course.
I'd like to sort of stare.
Stare away.
You know, the thing about the long-term facility and the group of people that met, I was part of that group, and it turned out to be that the original investment was so high and with no certainty of return because if the project did not complete, it wasn't like an investment where you got your money back. And so then COVID happened and everybody just stopped talking about it, but it was really financially daunting. Because what I think everyone was looking for was something that when they couldn't handle their own property, there was another alternative on island, so they wouldn't have to move on.
Yeah, not so much, and that could be a semantic thing, not so much as there's long-term care, there's assisted living, there's independent living.
Right.
Long-term
Supportive
care is higher intensity.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
Independent is
Yeah.
different.
yeah. That was not what we were looking at. We were looking at cooperative housing where you would still be independent, but you would not have to take care of a home. You know, because of the amount of work involved.
Okay, and I think, and then it just says, is there any issues that are not listed above with PINA? Junk, garbage, boats, cars.
Very.
The ferry came up quite a few in the comments. It was quite a few respondents who were just worried about private service. Now that did pop up several times. And when you think of the PI community, what's the most important issue for you and why? And again, as you can see, ferries there. Parking.
What was service?
Sometimes I don't know. I did not generate this well. Yeah. And then again, if you want more of these comments, they're all printed in the tables by theme as well.
Well, I just would like to thank you, Dominique, first of all, for putting the survey together, because I watched the process and it was complex, but then for somehow making sense of all this. Because when we did the last one, it was by hand.
Yeah.
And I know how difficult that was, but it was a long time ago.
It just looks fancy. Google did everything. I just
Yeah.
I put it together.
It's a brilliant job, and we may be able to repeat it with other subjects or variations. And in every case, it will help us with any dealings with the city. We come to them with something looking very professional and say, this is what the residents want.
Yeah. And say, you know, we have approximately half of the respondents of households.
Yeah.
And this is what the trend is. Yeah.
The gravel that they're using, there really wasn't too much discussion about that. I know that driveway crush would probably compact a lot better and be a nicer surface. And what we're using right now is what's called wrapped recycled asphalt material.
Mhm.
Although I noticed they're stored on some of the potholes and filled up with a regular gravel recently, and you've got a bit of a stockpile down by the pump house that is the clean gravel. It's not wrapped. So maybe they're turning towards that now instead of the wrap. But ideally, if we're going to stick with gravel or like a stone surface, it would be nicer to have something that compacted like driveway crush.
Absolutely.
Well, that's
Interlocks
really
with
good
driving.
information to
That's
have.
what we have
Yeah,
going down
that's
from
great.
the circle to the Mud Bay Dockhead. Is that crushed gravel? It's kind of all gotten muddy now, but it's much more expensive, but it always packs nicely. It sort of interlocks.
Yeah, it doesn't roll off the road into the, and then when they grade it, of course, they're pushing it all out into the boulevard.
Can we make that a part of our suggestion to the city? Like, really, that's a really important
Have a
note.
look at what kind of surface gravel we're using.
Yeah, examine
It's
it,
noted.
have some say in it.
I think it was that thin green wedge that was consider other alternatives.
Well, the other thing too is same with dust suppression. There's a lot, you know, we've been through several versions of dust suppression since we've been here, and some of them are unacceptable. And some of them are better, and then the ones that are better require dampening of the surface so they will adhere. And I just want to raise the point that during COVID, the city was so hard pressed with staffing that we didn't get maintenance for what, how long, Veronica? We were,
So we couldn't get maintenance for 2 years. The first year of
Yeah, no
COVID,
ladder truck.
they couldn't come over because of the number of people in the cab, because they have to ride in the tug. And then the second year, the tug broke down for the barge, so we didn't get it again. But we did get dust suppression, and we were able to send that over. And the problem was it had been really dry. And of course, it needs to be moist. And the roads hadn't been graded. So this last year, in 2022, the roads were graded. We had a really wet spring. People did spray the roads before and it worked perfectly.
I think that kind of information, educating ourselves on that is so important, because when we have a problem, we tend to just say the city didn't but there's always a reason, and to know the history of how it unfolds and how it can work is really important to us, and then we can maybe make it better, like we might have a better idea.
I can tell you right now that I have spoken with roads, and of the 5 crew they had last year, they've got 2 left. So there's a dire shortage of labor in the city. In fact, at the city council yesterday, the chair was saying advertising. They're advertising all these positions that the city has. So it's really hard to get labor, but the roads foreman is going to try and get over here later this month. I'd asked for the brush cutting of the blind corners for the maps that I'd already sent him, and to address the potholes that are coming up. And as far as work starting, the contractors, subcontractors, everybody won't be up and running before May. So I would imagine that we will be getting our annual maintenance about the same time of year as usual, which will probably be early June. And the dust suppression, of course, happens after the roads are graded.
Thank you, Veronica.
Yeah.
If there's anything online,
No,
speak your
there's-
piece.
There's no chat.
I'm going to stop the Zoom in a moment. I did hear Ken say that other suppressions are eco-friendly and being investigated. So it's a question about eco-grid, investigation of more eco-friendly.
Oh, this is called Cypher Environmental. It comes from Winnipeg.
Looking at this.
I'll take it over.
Investigation looking.
I'll take it over. to
Email
the-
Ken. Okay, so I'm going to stop. Thank you very much for online, and thank you for joining. That's the one I recommended. Have a good day. Okay. For